bigotos sacanadores?
You know, when I first saw the trailer for Predator Badlands, I wasn't initially too excited. Until I realized it was directed by Dan Trachtenberg. He made those last two Predator movies. They were highly acclaimed, so then I thought, maybe I should be. Until I remembered those last two movies were a bit overrated. Yeah, they were well received, but so was Romulus, so what does that mean? It's not too uncommon to dislike either of them, especially Killer of Killers, but that may just come down to how supposedly great they are. I mean, in reality, the only really bad one is The Predator, if you don't count the AVP movies. Fuck those. But in the same vein, a lot of people don't go beyond the first movie. I will admit, I'm not a huge fan of any of these. I've never been a big Predator fanatic. I find that movie a bit overrated.
Get the fuck out!
But I also don't dislike most of the sequels either. I think Part 2 is overhated by many, Predators is just fine, though a bit confusing. But what came next is so bad, it's hard to go into anything too open-minded. Upon seeing these two movies, I pretty much knew they'd be highly acclaimed. It's just the way this goes. Making it simple, going back to the roots, it usually guarantees success. Usually. And while the recent animated Killer of Killers is a whole different ballgame, the 2022 movie Prey is essentially the simple back-to-the-basics approach, which seemingly got the job done. At the time, it was hard not to like, given whatever the fuck this was. But in hindsight, simplicity doesn't mean too much if it's the best thing about the movie.
They had the whole damn thing all wrong.
We're gonna get into why these movies are not as perfect as they may seem, because at this point I'm used to being disliked. And in the case of Prey, 94% is a bit insane. Set in 1917, the focus here is obviously a young aspiring warrior Naru of the Comanche tribe, and the adversity that lies within.
Who invited you? We won't be gone long enough to need a cook.
You are good at so many other things. Why do you want to hunt?
That's the true enemy, not the Predator who's soon approaching. No, a bunch of manly idiots who think women are brain dead. This means the men can almost exclusively do nothing, and the desired simple premise fits into that quite nicely. Just like the original, it's human against alien, relying on quick wits and strategy to outsmart a superior being. I completely understand why fans were happy to see this, but when you really think about it, the execution isn't the best. I think one of the biggest issues is the lead, Naru, Amber Midthunder, who not only fails to be relatable aside from being looked down on, but also just unlikable. I get it, Disney product, we have to focus the story on this, but similar to the Mulan remake, there's no development to justify this. It's not completely like that, we don't have a perfect individual here. But the way it goes is she made one mistake, apparently there's no coming back from that. The men say she can't handle it, but one quick scene with practicing and tying ropes to her axes is enough to make her into an amazing hunter. Again, the mistake she made early on wasn't even really her fault. It doesn't mean she was a great hunter, but now she is, and that's not development. This literally would have been better if she already was amazing and perfect, because, at least that way, it would have made sense. We get a scene later when she sneaks up on some guy, knocks him out, uses him as bait. It's supposed to mean something.
You think that I'm not a hunter like you, and I'm not a threat. That is what makes me dangerous.
Only thing is, sneaking up on some fat guy who isn't paying attention is not that impressive. I'd argue him is more impressive. Yeah, there is one pretty cool segment when she takes out a bunch of men in a single shot view, but it's the only scene in the movie like that. She just isn't a very good character, isn't even that likable to be honest, and aside from her brother's death, it doesn't really show any emotion. Mainly about herself. I go as far to say she's selfish, outright unlikable. Yeah, her brother is also a manly man of sexism, but he does still carry her back when she's unconscious, which she hardly appreciates.
What an ungrateful bitch.
Then you have her, I guess, one-liners, and none of them are good.
Next time you're cooking. There you are.
I get they're trying to be the movie with Schwarzenegger, but that's not working. Speaking of that movie, even though it was mainly about Dutch, there were still a good amount of memorable characters. Here, we have body bags. Yeah, they were body bags too, but when you lean the movie in this feminist direction, you know how that goes. You have one guy being a complete asshole for no reason, everybody is incredibly stupid, refusing to believe anything, despite a skinned snake and a tree full of blood. So when they get killed off one by one, there's no feeling whatsoever. This is an issue the next movie will somewhat have, and we'll get to why, but given the anthology approach, there's kind of an excuse there. In this case, you have the whole movie, and you chose to do nothing with any of them. The only one who was close to being relevant is her brother, who at some point gives up.
We should go.
Thinks I'm the threat. This is as far as I go.
I honestly don't know why. He claimed to be superior, said she wasn't good enough, so what the hell happened to make him decide to die for no reason? None of them are memorable, they're overly mean, overly stupid, and I will actually say it, the Predator had a better cast.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
Yes, it was ridiculous, but at least it was something. And that said, it wasn't the biggest issue with that movie anyway. And no, I'm not saying I prefer that, I do legitimately like things about this one. Mainly it's pretty to look at, some good action scenes, and the Predator does get a few good kills. Thing is, and I know some people may think I'm going too far, but this Predator doesn't really act like the other Predators. One of the first things we see him do early on is take on a huge bear, head on, leading to lots of damage. Given how this thing operates, I don't know why it would do that. During the climax, it seems to walk into traps way too easily. It's not like Dutch, that was more thought out. And overall, this Predator is kinda stupid. Maybe you could blame that on when this movie takes place, but if so, give an explanation. I highly doubt that's what they're going for. And another issue, which again will be, in a way, prevalent in the next movie, at one point it kills somebody who is completely defenseless. I thought it was about honor. In other films, we see him ignore people like this, but now it seems to want the body count going up, even if it's self-damaging and without purpose. Yeah, it does take on a small army and have a unique death at the end, but nothing about this Predator really has me caring. I mean, the generic bad guys who fought the thing were kind of stupid anyway. Maybe you should get the fuck out of there? So when you put it all together, a plot about overcoming adversity doesn't make for a movie that saves a franchise. I know some people think it does, they may even call it the best Predator sequel. But once you get past the really bad movies, we have a cheap imitation of the original that gives us a similar climax, only not as good. It's okay, the end of it is cool, some of the traps are well thought out, but if copying the original movie is all you really have, I don't know how this got such a high rating. I will say it's pretty to look at, a beautiful film, that's one of the highlights, and every now and again you get a relatively inventive moment. Stuff like these two men being killed in the background, unnoticed, like I said, some unique kills, and she does get that single badass scene that's done in one shot. I would probably call this movie serviceable because it still is, by no means a bad time, but nothing amazing, nothing really memorable, and not a movie that would lead me to want this director to continue the franchise. It's apparent he's not going anywhere, as his big theatrical movie is probably a day away, but first, earlier this year, we got something else. Something completely different. Killer of Killers, his animated anthology, which is similar in criticism, but not really. I say similar as in I like it about the same, being it's fine, but heavily overrated. But unlike Prey, it's not following a single story, so you can give it some leniency. I'll get into why it's still an issue and how a lot of it falls flat, but there's pure and simply things wrong with this that commonly gets overlooked. Not by everybody, but again, 95% positive. I'm gonna have to break down these 3 stories that eventually lead into one final story, the conclusion. But do keep in mind, one of the notable benefits of this movie is that it trims the fat, giving us Predator battles between different nationalities in different time periods. That may sound very appealing given the previous movies, but that and really good animation may be where the pros end. The first part, The Shield, set in 841 Scandinavia, is actually a decent enough tale as most of these are, with a heavy focus on tragedy and revenge. In this case, the Viking leader, Ursa, girl boss, Disney, have to have one, is legitimately given a sad backstory having to kill her own father, and these characters are, in the time they're given, well written. We get memorable kills too, by them and the Predator when it shows up. The antagonist is unexpectedly dickish.
Daughter of Einar.
Who?
Ursa, daughter.
Who look like a Viking washerwoman. These floors could use a scrubbing.
Silence!
Kinda wish he lasted longer. There are a few cliches thrown in, like her son being a new killer. Who would guess? And it all wraps up with a unique, suspenseful battle on the ice, which is a well-done scene. While the action and the fast pacing suits the anthology format perfectly, the issue comes in when I'm supposed to care. Her backstory, son not making it, lots of people dying, is simply not effective when you only get around 25 minutes with them. I am completely aware that's almost unavoidable, and they probably did the best they could, but you can't get around it. A lot of time is spent on stuff that has no effect whatsoever. Maybe if the son assisted her in combat, that may have been enough, because the next 2 bits kind of do that, but it's easily the saddest death in this, and it's completely wasted. I will admit I enjoyed it, the combat and Predator kills are inventive, but in this case the anthology format kind of holds it back. Maybe if the sword didn't do the exact same thing, but it does. This time set in 1609 Japan, the 2 brothers Kenji and Kyoshi, both voiced by Louise Ozawa Chenshi, who voiced Hanzo Kawakami in Predators, and the deal is one wants revenge on the other because he scarred his face, and by revenge, I mean scarring his face back. That was worthwhile, but the Predator is again on the hunt, wants to add a few new kills to his list, and you know the rest. They team up, take the thing down, the less honorable brother won't make it, and I have the same question. Why do I care?
I raised an a-hole!
Granted, I don't know if I need to care at this point, they're not exactly that close right now anyway, but that's not the only problem with this bit. The honorable brother Kenji even being there is confusing. It's not to kill him, so it's hard to be invested, and it's also way more cliché, reliant on predictability. Kyoshi is all of a sudden willing to sacrifice himself. I don't think after all those years you would just change. And I'm sorry, but I'm really sick of somebody being mortally wounded, but living until he no longer needs to. I'm not saying this part is bad, it honestly isn't, but simply giving us Predator combat doesn't warrant this much praise. I like the fight scene by the bell, that's creative. I enjoy the minimal speaking approach. It's definitely inventive in ways, that's the main plus, but I just don't care enough. I will say there are ways to do this kind of thing right, but with an anthology, you can't rely this heavily on sad moments. When they quote-unquote trim the fat, that should have made for a carefree, action-packed set of stories. That's not really what this is. And besides, these fools don't even realize they're supposed to stare at those floating objects in wonder. I do still enjoy these for what they are, but then we get to the bullet.
Hang on, this is gonna be bad.
Set in 1942, focusing on John J. Torres, a drafted U.S. Navy fighter pilot, and a mentor voiced by Michael Bowe. Wrong franchise, buddy. This one's not sad, not dramatic, not even really good. It's just kinda stupid. Since Torres clearly can't fight a Predator, it's air combat. That's the focus here, meaning it's a World War II plane against a big alien spaceship. Okay, after everybody is decimated, including Mentor Bo, because sacrifice to buy you time excuse, in other words, there must be at least one sad death, he literally must take on the ship alone. This includes fixing the wing of a moving plane that's on fire, with nobody flying it while being targeted. The Uncharted franchise wouldn't entertain this.
Get off my plane!
Really? The issue here is not tragedy, nobody who dies is that important. They do foolishly get themselves killed because why not? But the way he beats it is ridiculous, physics are simply not a thing, and even though it's an animated Predator movie, at some point, enough is simply enough. You do get creative kills despite being in planes, I'll give it that. The movie is not short on those, but the idiocracy of one single guy taking this thing out, ignoring any laws of reality whatsoever, and landing in the water from a moving plane, I just can't get into this. I do want to point out, I do enjoy these movies for what they are, in a non-caring way. I don't get the rating they got, that's complete nonsense, but I would call it one of the better Predator movies, if not for the ending. You know, the conclusion, the final part. Obviously, the three individuals proving they can kill a predator are going to be abducted, held in stasis, and set to fight in some kind of arena. That may sound like a good idea on paper, but when you really think about it, it actually makes no sense at all. First off, they have to fight each other, which alone is completely unfair, especially given one of them used a plane, so good luck. A Viking captain, a samurai warrior, and a pilot. Aren't Predators supposed to be intelligent? And the reward for the victor will be fighting the greatest Predator warrior of them all.
Are you fucking retarded? What the fuck are you talking about?
So, just to clarify, because they proved themselves by killing a Predator with whatever they had to use, and potentially killing each other, the reward is fighting the strongest Predator they can find. Did this guy watch the previous movies? Because in those movies, if you proved yourself, they backed down. They respected it. We saw this at the end of the second fucking movie. This is what I meant by, like Prey, they get the Predators wrong, because opposed to them being stupid and killing victims who can't defend themselves, in this case, they do the exact opposite. Well, kind of, unless they heavily overestimate their abilities, so all I can figure is these Predators are assholes. The whole honor system is fucking gone, but then the logic that plagued the third bit is extended here. To high levels of insanity. They initially fight until realizing that won't end well. Taurus gets eaten by an alien beast, who they also threw in the mix because that's fair. But as luck would have it, a Predator got eaten too, but he actually got chewed up. Taurus didn't, leaving his weapon behind for good use. And after it's dead, it gets swept away with him in it. Never mind how he got out of it, he comes back, piloting a hoverbike, because being a pilot means he can easily do that. And even fly one of their ships.
But if we can get up to that ship, I think I can fly us out.
Okay, look, I know in this day and age you can't negatively talk about a movie with a rating in the 90s, but come on. Just come the fuck on. Are we really gonna say this overly convenient, incredibly stupid, anticlimactic finale is worthy of that rating? Maybe they give it a pass due to being animated? I don't see why, but in all honesty, I think it's simply not being the other movies. Yes, it's a breath of fresh air, so was Prey, that's undeniable, but that doesn't mean you can act like they're amazing, almost flawless movies. Because they're not. It's possible they really want to set up future movies, maybe even an expanded Predator universe. But what this does do is show the Predators don't really make sense anymore. And upon two of the three escaping minus one arm, I don't even know where they're going, or what time period they're in, not to mention their current location. But in the end, it doesn't matter, they're immediately pursued, so I guess nothing is good enough for them. Then the girl boss is put on ice, ending things off by showing us Naru. Are you saying we give a damn? Because even though that movie was really popular, you can't actually think that was a reason why. Am I saying it's Disney? Of course you can. Alright, the extended version. It's funny how that happened, isn't it? I still don't really care, I don't even know what it's gonna lead to, but there is something funny about Disney taking that ending that only gave us the boring female lead, and threw in the two more interesting men. Oh, in case you're some new fan who's probably real mad by now about my opinions, and you've only seen the new movies, they were in the first two. In case you didn't know. That being said, I don't really know what to make of this. It's full of issues nobody ever talks about, and by nobody, I mean most people. A lot still do. I don't want to repeat the us situation. And to be fair, once again I'll say it, I did enjoy it. It does, like I said, trim the fat, give us Predator on human combat, or plane combat. So you've kind of got to enjoy it for what it is. As somebody who's a much bigger Alien fan in general, I'm definitely not going to be biased toward this, because that can go both ways. But I'd say the first two segments are the highlights when they're not trying to be emotional, because when it comes to this kind of movie, that just doesn't work. The third segment is just too ridiculous. There's something about fixing a burning plane's wing while it's in the air I simply can't get into. And I will not deny the finale is a complete mess that goes against everything the Predators are supposed to be. It isn't well written in the slightest. It doesn't seem to lead to anything. I hate to be the person to say I wish that segment didn't exist, but I wish that segment didn't exist. As a whole, I do prefer this to Prey because it's actually one cohesive story and it's not great. There's no excuse for the generic lead character, over-reliance on feminist bullshit, and just plain and simply being a cheap imitation of the first movie. I don't like saying imitation as it's by no means the same movie, but it's not doing anything better either. More so nostalgia bait, I don't know what to call it, but reviving the franchise? That can't be said about either of these. This brings me to today, more so this week. I predict this going up hopefully not on release day, but given Predator Badlands offers a outcast grunt, teaming up with a female humanoid android without legs, I don't know, not the most promising idea. Could be good, could not be, who knows, but given I'm not a fan of the movies that were relatively easy to get right, I don't see any reason to be excited about this. Let's not forget, it's Disney, and in this case, they've had some success with a franchise that was kind of dead, so given how they treat stuff that actually was the definition of a cow that's been milked to death, I think it's easy to see the Predator name will soon be a shell of its former self. You know, again. Or they'll actually take the theatrical release seriously and not rely on easy stuff to get the ratings, but I think we know by now that's not the Disney way. So let me know what you think about all this down in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you enjoyed, and if you're interested in future content like this, sharing the video is highly appreciated. Don't forget the bell, it's the only way to get new videos. Actual recommendations, not reliable. I'm the analyst, and remember kids, overcoming adversity isn't enough.